MONSTRA. Há 25 anos, à solta em Lisboa.
MONSTRA.
I'm going to start with just a quick note about the obtuse word. It comes from essay of Colin Barth, wrote in 1970. He wrote about the third meaning while he was seeing some frames from Eisenstein. On this text, he talks about the obvious and the obtuse. And for him, the obvious is what comes first. So what comes first is very passive. We don't need to make any effort to get the meaning. But the obtuse is the opposite. It's more difficult to reach and sometimes has no meaning at all. It's very it's more difficult to get it. So I think this kind of fits pretty well in my work, because I try not to make things too obvious, and also try to see beyond the image or beyond the pictures, or you'll see a little bit along the way. So also this talk is divided in two parts. One, I will talk about the abstract videos, and also the second part will be about my live visual performance that I also often do. I say that my interest my interest in this area started when I went to study in Porto. I went to study audiovisual communication in Porto, in the Polytechnic institution, and there my housemate introduced me to João Ricardo. João Ricardo is a musician. He was at that time working with electronic music, and we kind of went along together, and we decided that it would be nice to make a project together. And so we start beating and jamming at my place, and very soon he started also giving me musics for my works in the university. And one of the works I made in university was this one. I went to Porto to study audiovisuals, but I specialize in photography, so that's my background, photography. But I was never interested in making photography in the kind of normal way. I was trying to use the techniques and the machines to do different things with lights and with the static image or still image. And Flickrs is part of that. It's a video, and what you see on that wall is like frames from the video, like pictures from the video, photographies. And all came after watching this image. It was a glitch from a Matrox video card I had at the time. And I was quite interested in this image because it was very graphic, and I started exploring this. And I noticed, because I had this equipment, different types of formats and video formats in the university, I started noticing that each format, like DVC, Betacam, Mini DV, DVDs, whatever, they have their own codecs, they have their own formats, they have their own image or error when we try to explore that. So that's what I tried for some time, try to provoke some errors in the equipment, sometimes kicking them, sometimes bending cables, sometimes just exploring or doing not so orthodox ways to provoke interference in the pictures. And from this, I made this Flickrs that João Ricardo helped me with the sound. I was this is the image result, just as small. I was really into this video noise, this glitch, this aesthetics. I was really into this kind of thing. So another project that I did, I made it during, while I was studying in Porto, was this Renax. So again, this is a photographic project. What I did here was simply, I had a scanner and I had different types of film and print image, and I start playing with the scanner while the scanner was scanning the picture. So every time I was pressing OK, scan, and I was doing some movements like performing, it was coming out a different image. So I couldn't reproduce the same thing. And also, if you apply with the resolution, sometimes the scanning goes faster or slower, so you'll get different results. So I was very fascinated with this, and I was playing a lot. So this is kind of the beginning of what I end up doing later. Around 2001, 2002, I bought this video mixer. At this time, I was also into doing some VJing work. I didn't have a computer at that time. It was just two VHS players, and so I was playing one and then mixing to another one. So I was doing the things, and suddenly I started discovering that I could generate image with this mixer, like doing feedbacks and playing with the filters. And so I started playing with this as a kind of a video synthesizer, generating image into its own with this mixer. And then from this, I made like 3 or 4 animations or films. I was just recording. I was jamming at home alone, and then recording recording this to a VHS recorder. And was that. And then I will select some parts and edit the videos. And this 1 plus B was part of this. Is one of these films I made with sound of Jorge. Then in 2004, in fact, I didn't pay much attention to that TV. I had a TV at home, a small TV, and I wasn't playing, it was just one day I was just switching the TV off, and I noticed there was kind of effect provoking when I was switching it off. And then I did it again, and that was a different image, and I will start looking at that with more interest. Like, okay, there's something here. So I started doing it very often, and I noticed that it was also creating different effects. So I said, okay, let's play with this a little bit. So I recorded the screen, and I just for some time was switching on and switching off the TV. By the way, it's this TV. And I asked as well, so send me 3 musics, or send me some music. He sent me 3, I choose 1, and this is an insert of the final results. I was never interested in manipulating image in the sense that, I'm not Photoshop, I was just trying to get what the equipment, the material was giving to me. this video, also with music by João Ricardo, I did the opposite way. So I had a lamp on the ceiling of the house I was living at the time, and I recorded. I made a video, like moving the camera very fast, and then I removed some stills from that video, and I noticed that there was some lines. That's because the fields of the video. So there was some lines, and then I said, okay, this is interesting. So let's play this again. I put the image. I removed some frames, and I was at the time already working with the computer, so I had Resolume as a VJ for VJ software. I put image in the Resolume. I just changed a little bit the colors or made some manipulations there, and then I put it in random, and this is the results. There's two layers here, they are always moving, but it's very random. This next one is also very similar. In 2007, I bought my first Mac, so I changed completely the softwares. And I was playing at this time with a software called Model 8. And Model 8 was really fun to play with because it was kind of a video synthesizer. And I was at this time using only still image, like graphics with transparent backgrounds. This video was made only with this picture, this image, this graphic. I just change a little bit the colors and give you some in the software, and then I change some parameters. So this is the result. I think it was one of the last videos I made with João. I mean, it was a privilege to have him. I mean, giving this sound, this music support for all these years. And here I was playing as before. It's kind of the same method. I was playing a bit with the software, recording that to, in this case, wasn't to a VHS recorder, but to a computer. And then just edits the footage, on Premiere along with the sound. So it was basically that. And yeah, it gives lots of freedom, so we can produce or generate image and then just select as a photographer. Like you go out, you take pictures, and then you select and you present what you choose. In 2010, I was teamed up with Simon Wedham, which is a British sound artist. So we were invited for this festival in Madeira called Madeira Dig Festival. So and the idea was Simon was coming to the island to do some field recordings, and I will be responsible for the visual. So we will play a show, and I was doing the visuals, so Simon was doing the sound. So for more or less a week, I was driving Simon around the island. So while he was doing his field recordings with different types of microphones, and I was, at this time really interested in microscopes. So I was teaching in university, the Madeira University, and I went to the biology department. I asked for a microscope, if it was possible to borrow one. And they had one like on the corner with a video camera, and I said, perfect. Okay, So I started working with microscopes and playing with microscopes without even, this is really random. Anything was planned here. And after when I was with Simon, I realized, okay, but you are working with microphones. I'm playing with microscope. So there's something, there's a connection here with the word mic. So we decided to call this project Mic. And we did one concert in Madeira, and then we did another one in Seville, in Valencia. I will talk about this later. But anyway, so this video I made after our concert because we were invited by a festival in Barcelona called Storum Festival, and they invite us to send they invite us to send a video for a DVD. They will try to release a DVD, and they ask us to send a video. Okay, I had this image that's some monsters that I gathered from the forest in Madeira, and I start playing with the microscope and recording the image. I made a kind of edit that material, and I sent it to Simon, and Simon sent me the music already composed for the video. I think was the few times the video was made first, and then the audio came later. With the microscope, I discovered that because of the shallow depth field of the lenses, you just move a little bit, you focus, it can be focused or it can be focused very, very easily. So this video was about that, like focus and then defocusing things in like this 3D surface or material. We could play with this. So I will talk about microscopes later. There's more. Head tail rail was the result or the practical side of my PhD studies. I did here in the Fine Arts School in Lisbon. And this is a 35 millimeters film. So I never had experience with the cinema or to work with film like celluloid, this material for a movie, because the photography, yes, but not for a movie. And what happened here is that I was once I went to a cinema, and there was some bits and pieces of film on the floor, and I gather and I look at it. Was wow, amazing, these pictures. And the projectionist said, okay, you can take it, it's leftovers. And so I took it home, and I was amazed with this image. And then I went to start going to some old cinemas, asking for there's some leftovers around, or there's some films that you want to throw it away. And they say, okay, there's some bits here, there's some bits there. I even went to Toby's. They gave me some films. So, but I didn't know how. I didn't have how to. I didn't have a tool or a machine or where to watch that. So I didn't have any equipment. I would just have the reels. And okay, and when you start unrolling them, it's a lot. So the floor can fill up the floor very easily. So I have a cousin, my uncle Dino. He's a good carpenter, and I asked him to make like a kind of moviola. Here, the middle one is the moviola he built for me, like all in wood. And so I could at least move the things, and at least I wasn't rolling and rolling at the same time. So it was already an advantage with the progress there. And then I start buying some equipment, some that film slicer that you can see there, also custom-made one for special holes. So, okay, I had this. So I start cutting all this footage, all these films, the celluloid, start cutting in different ways and join them, and cutting and join them, and cutting and joining them in completely different ways, to a point that I was already making the side holes. And here I'm kind of removing some parts that the holes weren't well made, so I had to remove that. But also I use this material, this tiny bits here in the film. So it was all about this. And then I was having, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes of film, and I didn't know what I had there. So I had to go to a cinema, the ones that were working at the time, and ask the projection so between the breaks. So can you screen this so I can record the screen and go back home and see how it is, and if I have to change here or there, because I didn't have any notion about the time and how it was. So it took me like a year in this process, cutting, drawing, lots of tape on top. And yeah, it was a really interesting process. Especially, it was a really fun, interesting PhD. I'm very happy that they allow me to do this for the PhD. Oh, head, tail, rail. Why? Because I was working with the invisible sides of these films, these reels. Normally, when we go to a cinema, not now because it's all digital, but before, we will only watch the middle of the whole reel. So there was a head, there was a tail, and the rail was the side where the soundtrack is placed. So the sound is optical. There's a lot of collage here. I know sometimes it was really thick, the layers of tape, and I think in some projections they had to open a little bit more the gate for the film to pass through, to go through. So yeah. Uval is from 2021. I was a moment in my life I went I had a break from making videos and all these things and from art. I want to travel, and around, I think after COVID I kind of came back to Portugal, and I was trying to reconnect with my friends to see and to more or less to be updated what was going on. And Vitor Joaquim was a good friend. We'll talk about him also soon. He sent me one of his albums. One of the last release. And I listened, and I said, okay, maybe I'll make a video for him. And just a few months, I think, before, a friend had this really small tele lens for the smartphones, for this really small ones, and I borrowed from him, and I start playing, towards the sun, and just playing like Thomas was doing also with just playing with that towards the sun, always recording towards the sun and around. And was creating this kind of flares and sun flares and this distortions, lights, distortions. I was really interested in that. So I recorded, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of that because we were hiking and then we stopped, we had a break, and then he had the lens, and I said, okay, let me borrow that. Let me see what I can do. I was recording with the iPhone, and then when I listened to music from Vitor, I said, okay, maybe this footage, this image can fit here. And there's one thing here. The original music is twice faster, and the original video was twice faster. But then when I sent to Vitor, he said, maybe let's slow down. So he changed the tempo of his music just for the video. There's no After Effects, there's nothing here, just light and the lens and the editing, the cutting. Just a lot of editing. But very basic editing, just cut and cut and join. During COVID, I got COVID and I couldn't travel, so I couldn't go back to I don't know, I think I have to go back to Madeira at some point, but I couldn't, so I stayed stuck. I stayed here in Lisbon, stuck in a friend's apartment. Luckily, it was free, the apartment. And I started playing, to entertain myself, I was in the house for like a couple of days, I don't know, 5 days, something like that. I started playing with this one picture, moving, because it was more or less what I was doing, especially in live context, was using still image. But I used one picture moving in this direction, the same picture moving in this direction, and then from top to bottom and bottom to top. And start using it with certain blending modes, so they could mix in a very smooth way. And I tried a lot, like to see which blending mode was more was better for it, and the velocity for the pictures to move. I was talking about now photography. This is a picture from the treetops, and at this time I was invited to do an installation again for Madeira Day Festival. They invite me for installation, and I said, okay, maybe I will work on this and I will present this. The idea was to have the different screens. I asked Vitor to compose. I sent him the video. I asked him to compose the music or the sound. And what I'm going to show here now is like the new version. In this case, for 4 screens. It was premiered yesterday in the Art and Design Biennale in Funchal. So it's very fresh, and each screen is showing a different picture, a different image. So they are not the same. They have the same feeling, is kind of the same thing, but they are different images. Here we have this illusion that, I don't know, I like this, when the image, it's like 4 layers, they start mixing, blending. It's kind of, then it's very noisy, it's very grainy, there's lots of grains. It's like, I don't know, I really like this kind of, the effects that, and it really works with this more nature more nature image. Now for something different that connects to my previous, the early experimentations. Also, João Ricardo in the last December, he sent me the link for his last release, like 2 albums, available online, and I start listening, and there was one that I really I like this. Maybe it's time to reconnect with him and make some video. And because these albums, this music he made were entirely made in using an analog synthesizer, I said okay. And by coincidence, like a couple of weeks before, I found in a box these 2 tapes, these 2 VHS cassettes. They are from 2003. So this was the tapes I was, some of the tapes that I was recording while I was playing with the mixer, the early mixer I showed. So I digitalized this videos, like more than 2 hours, more or less. It's like random things, like lines and feedbacks, and I select just some parts, and I edit this video for this music of João. I mean, he didn't ask. The idea was to send him as a Christmas gift. Like, okay, João, like here is. I don't know if you like it, but yeah, here you have it. But it was really, really fun for me to make it, and it took like 2 days to select and make the whole thing, because I was really excited to have like back to the old times making this. Kind of reminds me of the on-off, like this techno style. So I think this was the last video I made. I mean, not the last, but I made already new ones, but this is more like, say, abstract art. Even before I bought that video mixer that I showed earlier, I was already playing live with DJs and some musicians, also with João Ricardo. With João Ricardo, we were sometimes playing all night long. We will gather, switch the equipment on, and just jamming all night long. Just jamming. He was doing his things, I was doing my thing, but the things were connected. We had a small TV screen that we will see the results, but we were just jamming. I also like this idea of jamming. Like even when I was a VJ, I was considering myself a video jammer, not a video jockey. Or it was more this jamming thing, this playing live, this thing, which was one of the things that took me here, because I never liked it to render waiting for renders. When we apply on Premiere, like to apply an effect or After Effects, and then you have to wait like 2-3 hours to finish the render. I never liked that. So for me, it was like pressing the button and the thing were happening and the effect was already there. For me, it was perfect. And this VJ softwares, they are allowing me to do that. So, and for me, it was always the connection between sounds and an image, like a marriage, had to match to that, yeah. For me, it was very important, this connection. Maybe I was very influenced by this project called Ecstatic. They are from the Ninja Tune label. They were doing videos for Cold Cut, and for me, that's we were seeing and watching, and seeing and listening at same, watching and listening at the same time. All that for me, that was also very important. And also, we'll try to that image to complement the sound and not to disturb the sound. That's also something important for me when I go on the stage and try to make some visuals for a musician. It's like it needs to complement, not to disturb. Otherwise, there's no point. With João Ricardo, we had this audiovisual project we call Pygar, and from 2002, more or less, until 2008, we played in many festivals and venues. And João was making the music, I was making the visuals. So most of the concerts I made with João, I was just using video loops and nothing else. Well, sometimes also in the last years was more still image graphic, like PNG files with transparent background, so I could react with the sound and so on and so on. But I always felt that I had to do it in a different way. The same thing, but in a different way. So I started doing what I call live film scanning. It basically is, I had this camera. It's an old camera. It was made to scan films, like 35 millimeters film. And I was connecting this to the computer and do the whole processing in the computer. So the idea was to not have any image on the computer, but to have the image, let's say, on my hand. So I could move the images along with the film. So I will be photographing some things, like could be graphics, could be whatever, pictures, landscapes, and then I will show them live, and using the computer only to process the image. With Jerome Faria, we played a few times. He was on the musicians from Madeira that we had kind of really good connection. This one wasn't with this technique with the film, but we played in Madeira Dig and in a festival in Paris with this technique. I don't know if you can see me there, but I'm moving the film and putting them and removing from the scan and scratching. It was more physical. That's something that I was really looking at that time. And with the same concept, or I have something outside of the computer. I start playing with the microscope again, like I said, with Simon. And this is what I used for the concert, for the whole concert, was just this what is there, that tiny bits of things that I was gathering. With the same technique, with the microscope, I played this concert with Vitor Joaquim's Mi Brev in 2011. We had two projections, one on the floor and one on the wall. Okay, for Vitor Joaquim, I used only what was there. And, you magnify that. It seems nothing, but there's a lot there with the microscope. I mean, with Vitor, we played in many different venues and places. This is the last concert I did with Vitor. This is the next album, and here I'm using ESF files. I'm using also the VDMX software, and I'm just processing all this information in the computer. Okay, I think I can stop here. Thank you.
Monstra. Há 25 anos, à solta em Lisboa.
Monstra.